Hi, everybody. There we go. If I could have your attention, please, we'd like to go ahead and get started, but I do have just a couple of housekeeping items that I'd like to make sure that everybody understands. If I just want to encourage you, if you have not checked in or signed in, please do so at some point in time, either during the meeting or before you leave, so we make sure you have we have your contact information so we can keep everyone updated as we go along. Also, there are restrooms as you go down the hall over here. Uh, there are two restrooms over there if anyone needs the facilities over there. There are snacks and drinks in the back there. So please help yourself to any refreshments that you might need. My name is Michael Clack. I'm Director of Development Services, also known as the building official for the City of Scottsdale. Excuse me. And I'd like to, on behalf of the City of Scottsdale, I would like to welcome everyone to tonight's open house. I'd like to acknowledge the council members that are present. I believe Councilwoman Janet and Millhaven are here, and I also see Councilwoman Solange Whitehead. I believe Councilwoman Caputi and Littlefield are also joining us virtually. Additionally, I would like to acknowledge the Building Advisory Board of Appeals members and the Scottsdale Environmental Advisory Commission, those members that are present. If you would just please wave your hands and let everyone know you're here. Thank you. So I thank you all for coming, and I just want to give you a brief introduction as to why we're here and what brought us here today before I turn it over. I'm going to hurry up and get out of the way. So this is I just wanted to let you know that we did have a work study session on August 23rd of 2022, where we briefed the council on certain aspects of the 2021 family of codes that we were contemplating adopting at that particular time. And we were looking for some direction, and we received that direction from the council, and I want to thank the council for giving us such clear direction that we would go ahead and go with option B as it was enumerated on the work study session, which involves advancing the building code amendments except for the 2021 International Energy Conservation Code and the International Green Construction Code amendments for City Council consideration as part of the September 20th, 2022 agenda. Also, I want to bring to everyone's attention that we did have members of the Building Advisory Board of Appeals, Vice Chair Julian Anderson, spoke and gave a presentation at the work study session. And also the chair of the Scottsdale Environmental Advisory Commission, Natalie Chrisman Lazar, I hope I said that name correctly. Okay, thank you. They gave testimony also at that particular meeting. So part of the other direction that the council gave us had to do with a proposed electrification requirement related to gas appliance and new single-family residents were to be removed for consideration with the building code amendments. And also the requirement for pull-out recycling bins in single-family residence kitchens would be removed from the building code requirements brought forth for council consideration. They also said that it would be fine if we wanted to do additional public outreach on the proposed International Energy Conservation Code and International Green Construction Code amendments, and advance those for City Council consideration before the end of the 2022 calendar year. And so they left it at staff's discretion regarding an open house or the ability to receive additional input from the public regarding those codes. And so that's why we're here tonight, is to receive that additional information and additional thoughts and inputs from the public. So as I said, we're here to get those thoughts on our proposed provisions of the Energy Code and the Green Construction Code. Want to stress, this is not a public hearing. There will be no votes. There will be no deliberation taken by any of the boards or commissions or the council. Rather, this is an open house forum designed to hear from you, the members of the public, and get your input, and we will collect that input at the end of the evening. There will be comment cards for your use. You can write on those cards and give us your thoughts on that. Uh, just to make sure we understand on the, and forgive me for being repetitive, but I just want to make sure everybody understands where we're coming from and what we're doing tonight. We're talking about just the 2021 International Green Construction Code and the 2021 International Energy Conservation Code. And we've also included the 2021 International Residential Code. We pulled that from council consideration because there were several amendments in the Energy Code that is also related to amendments and sections of the Residential Code. And we wanted to make sure that those were in sync together to avoid any contradiction or anything. And so those will be forwarded to the City Council. On September 20th, just last week, the council adopted the 2021 International Building Code, Fire Code, Mechanical Code, Plumbing Code, the International Fuel and Gas Code, the existing Building Code, the International Swimming Pool and Spa Code, and the 2020 National Electric Code. Those were approved by the council last week, September 20th, with an effective date of January 1st, 2023. I also want to mention that after tonight's meeting, there are two regularly scheduled meetings of the Scottsdale Environmental Advisory Commission and the Building Advisory Board of Appeals on the October 19th and 20th, respectively. And this will be another opportunity for public input at those meetings. Regarding our timeline for adoption, I just want to tell you that we're going to be taking comments from tonight. We'll be preparing a report and sharing that with the council. There will also be at the November 14th council meeting is when we are scheduled to present this to the City Council so that they can take action on the adoption of the 2021 International Green Construction Code, the International Energy Construction Code, and the Residential Code, the International Residential Code. All of these will have an effective date of January 1st, 2023. So all the codes, all of the 2021 family of codes will have the same effective date. And there will also be an additional opportunity for members of the public to make a comment and let your voice be heard before the City Council at that time when they're considering those items. So with that, I'm finished for now anyway. I'd like to turn over to our facilitator, Christy Hill.
Good evening, everyone. We have a wonderful turnout tonight. We knew that we were going to have good attendance live, but you would also be surprised to know that we probably have almost as many virtual attendees this evening. So later when I explain the Q&A process, we'll get more into that. But I'm Christy Hill. I work in citizen service and actually am lucky enough to work in this building on a daily basis. And I do a lot of public engagement and public outreach. And so for that reason, I've been asked to facilitate the Q&A tonight. And I've already mentioned that we have quite a few virtual attendees that you can't see but are here. We will have plenty of time to address the questions virtually and in person. And when we get to the Q&A portion, I'll be bopping back and forth and working with Lisa to make sure that we're listening to the virtual participants and responding to their questions as well. In the second half of our meeting, We'll have more of an open house setting. You can see the displays behind you. We have a table at each area, and we'll have subject experts there so that you can ask questions. You can give your input, your ideas, your thoughts, things that you're passionate about. You can get those written down. You can log them with staff. And that will be the second half. So the first half will be focusing just on clarifying questions, but I'll reiterate that again when we get to the Q&A. If you want to log your comments, simply visit Scottsdale Government, ScottsdaleAZ.gov. You'd think I'd know that after 40 years, right? And search green, and you'll find our website. And there's also an online comment sheet. So if tonight, everything just kind of seems to be a lot to think about and you're not really sure what you want to say and what you want to focus on, you can go home and do that with your computer and do some thoughtful comments at that time as well. So we have many ways for you to log your ideas, your thoughts, your comments. For those participating in person, we also have the handwritten notes. You've seen them. I think they're in green. We will also take scribbles on your handouts. We'll take a napkin with your thoughts. We'll take all of that. And there's a comment box in the back on your way out that we'd like you to place those items in. And that way it will be documented and we'll have your thoughts and ideas. We'd like you to sign your name, but if you want to be anonymous, you can do that as well. There are a couple portions of business that Michael didn't touch on that I want to highlight. And that is, we do have recycle and compost here. We're one of the launching departments that are doing that. And so with all of your snacks and the things that you have to eat tonight, if you'll make sure you're consciously looking at those 3 different bins and putting them in the correct places. Ask questions if you don't know, and we're still learning, even those of us that are supporting the program. So thanks for doing that. We have free water bottles in the back or in the front of the room when you came in. There's a water machine back here, so if you get parched and need water, you can do that. And what else? More seating. We have a few seats up front still for those that are coming in late, and you can come on and sit up front here. And that is all I have that I wanted to add to your portion of business. So what will happen next in the flow of show is that Anthony, our Green Building Program Manager, is going to get up and he's going to share a PowerPoint presentation. He has quite a few great slides and he's going to talk about all those things that you're here to hear about. And then following Anthony's presentation, we'll have a Q&A session. And that is where we'll go back and forth and talk with virtual people and also our live folks. Again, want to reiterate that the Q&A is used for clarifying questions. If you want to register comments, you have ideas, you have thoughts, you're passionate about something, we want to hear about that in part 2 of our meeting at the workstations and with our subject experts. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Anthony so he can share his PowerPoint. Thanks, Anthony.
Thank you, Christy. So thank you everyone for coming out tonight. So we want to get into what we're proposing. And it's something that we've been involved in a long time at the City of Scottsdale with our green building program, going back since 1998. And so we've done a lot of things at the voluntary level. We slowly started to transition into the codes to make some of these provisions requirements because they're really no-brainers, it's low-hanging fruit. So I'm going to give you an overview of what we're proposing. But I first want to give some context as to, and actually Michael talked a little bit about this, but I want to frame it a little more so we're all on the same page. So there are 11 codes that staff is recommending to adopt. And we do this every 3 to 6 years. So it's not anything new except that we're proposing some new amendments that we haven't had before, as well as adopting the Green Construction Code as a mandatory code. So these are the 11 codes that these codes are part of the International Family of Building Codes. There's an organization called ICC, International Code Council, that produces these model codes. It's not legislative. ICC is not part of the government. It's not, it's an American-based organization. And it's also consists of industry members. City of Scottsdale is a member as well as cities and states. Everyone in the construction industry is involved in ICC. Through this process, there are technical committees. I serve and I continue to serve on the Energy and the Green Construction Code Committee. And some of our staff have also participated in the Residential Code Committee and Electrical, Plumbing, Mechanical. So it's about sharing information. And because we're members of the organization, ultimately we get the vote. And we vote on what those industry standards are. It's not perfect, but everyone has a voice, similar to what we try to do here at the local level and at the government. So what's also part of this process is not just the model code, it's also about our general plan at the local level. What are we proposing to do in terms of our elements, energy elements, sustainability, environment? So we've looked at that safety element as a part of health, life safety of the building codes, housing, water resources. So we accounted for these things as a part of our recommended amendments for the code adoption. So as Michael indicated, 8 of these codes have been approved already by City Council a week ago. So they were successfully approved. And I do want to point out there's a few items that are part of these codes that someone could say is related to uh, green building, because sometimes it's hard to really draw a line. I mean, these things cross over. Yeah, there are a lot of things we do that are already considered green, but we may not know that. But I'm going to give some examples. For instance, as a part of the plumbing code, last Tuesday night, as part of City Council adoption, we adopted water efficiency measures, high efficiency plumbing fixtures. Now, this is something that was already in our previous code, but we extended it into the current edition, the 2021 edition of the plumbing code. And by high efficiency, I mean better than low flow. We hear low flow toilets and low flow faucets, but that term has been around for 20 years. We're at the level of high efficiency toilets and water closets, high efficiency faucets and shower heads. And so these new flow rates are a part of the EPA water sense certification program. There are specifications for them. Industry has been involved in creating those specifications, and it has all been tested. So just to give you an example, this is something that we're doing already. That's also part of the Green Construction Code. There's a lot of crossover between the Green Construction Code and things that we are already doing. Uh, Efficient hot water delivery, water bottle filling stations. This is a new amendment that was recommended by our boards and commissions. So anywhere there's a water fountain, drinking fountain, there needs to be a water bottle filler. So this is something new and is considered as a part of green building. We incorporated it into the plumbing code. Another thing that happened last week is a part of the building code. We made an amendment for pull-out recycling trash bins and kitchen cabinets for multifamily, not single family, but multifamily projects, and also trash and recycling chutes. This is also something that could be considered also part of green building, and it is in the Green Construction Code. So as we move forward, I'm making the case here that there's a lot of things we're already doing. And so by adopting the Green Construction Code, it isn't a significant change because most of these things we're doing already, at least close to half of the things we're doing already. And finally, to the mechanical code and the energy code and the building code. There are already requirements for sound insulation between apartment units, been in the code for quite a while in the previous editions. This is also something considered as part of the Green Construction Code, but it expands beyond that, looks at different other uses for separation, sound insulation between uses. So what we're looking at now, all new apartments have to have insulation between the apartment units and between the apartment units and the common spaces. Also, ventilation, outdoor air, daylighting. These are things that we're doing some level of already in the baseline codes. So That's what we've done so far. Where do we need to go now? So these are the three remaining codes that need to be adopted or will be considered to be adopted by City Council. The residential code, the energy, and tonight we're just talking about the energy code and the green construction code. I want to really make a distinction and a clear point here. Traditionally, building codes have been about health, safety, and public welfare. The International Energy Conservation Code, which, by the way, first started in the year 2000, that was the first edition of this code. Um, the mission is different. It's for to regulate the design, construction of buildings for the effective use and conservation of energy over the useful life of the building. It's not just looking at the energy efficiency today, it's looking at it over the lifetime use. That could be 20 years, 30, 50, 60 years. It's looking long term, particularly for the various components of the code. That's why these elements are part of the code: the thermal envelope, the exterior wall, the ceiling, the roof, and having good insulation in there. Over time, HVAC or air conditioning units are upgraded. Um, we also have lighting that is usually upgraded, but the envelope, the thermal envelope, usually is not rebuilt or occasionally improved upon. Ceiling, you can add additional insulation in, but usually the walls is prohibitive to improve the thermal performance. So it's very important to get it done right the first time. And that's what the energy code is. Scottsdale, we've had many trends over the last 20 years, and we've been tracking them since 98, particularly with our green building program. We've had many energy code updates. At one point in time, we were requiring new construction to exceed the baseline codes by 15%. It's something that we did a while ago that we've incorporated. We recognize cathedralized attics where insulation is underneath the roof deck. This is very innovative. Maybe 20 years ago, 15 years ago, some cities were restricting doing this, and we embraced it and uh, considered it to be a higher performance method of construction and energy performance. Third-party energy raters that we've promoted, lighting was cost prohibitive at one time. You know, we were promoting it and people were saying they couldn't afford it. Same for double pane windows. You know, that only became prevalent in maybe around 2000. Before then, only the high-end builders or a few select builders were doing that. Now with standard construction, everyone's doing it. So all of this has transpired over the last 20 years. For quality, water efficiency, I would have gave you examples. Sorry about that. I guess I have to hold the mic. Then heat island mitigation, there's been some efforts on that, and we do have a heat island mitigation plan that's in the works that we're gonna get more serious and assertive with this. But we have been seeing a trend. And then finally, distributed solar generation. We've been seeing and tracking solar installations since about 20 years now, since about 2002. We're seeing a significant number every year permit. We actually have a designation for green solar permits. And so it's easy for us to track and see what the total numbers are. This year is going to be another record year. I was just looking at the numbers today at the permit so far since the beginning of the year, and we're going to be over 1,000 permits issued this year. I know it doesn't seem like much, but last year it was under 900. Year before that was 700. Year before that was 5, 4. Every year the numbers keep going up, and we're going to continue to see a trend there. And this is reflected in some of the proposed amendments. So the major changes in the IECC and the amendments. I'm not going to spend time on each one of these, but I just want you to see, and then also we have some of these items on the boards, the poster boards around in the back. And also they're highlighted in your handout as you came in. There should be two forms and they have yellow bars in them. They also have numbers or letters at the top. One is for energy and one is for green. So I'm going to be identifying those as I go forward here. Um, but this is important to know for at least residential, the installation values are going up for ceiling, R38 to R49. And by the way, this edition of the code is close to 10% improvement over the previous codes. So that's why we see these new provisions, duct leakage testing, high efficacy lighting. So raising the bar on lighting again. There's also EV capable charging is what we're proposing. It's not in the base code. There's been discussion nationally of incorporating it, and it will appear most likely in the 2024 edition. And so what we're saying is why wait? Let's incorporate it now into the amendments. Um, and there's solar ready zones as a part of the code. So there's the amendments are slightly different between commercial and residential. And I'm going to spend most of the time on the residential. So the first one, A, there's A, B, C, and it correlates with what's on the boards around the room. And also with your one sheet handout that has the energy on top, those 2021 International Energy Conservation Code. So heat island mitigation. This is actually already required in the commercial provisions of the energy code. So it's not brand new, but we're proposing to incorporate it for residential. And we're only looking at low-rise roofs. Low-rise is 2 and 12 or less slope. So it's a relatively flat, low slope roof. We're seeing that there's trends over the last 10, 15 years that flat roofs have polyurethane foam and then they have a white elastomeric coating on it. So it's very common. It's not really anything new. It's not uh, breaking technology or anything like that. All we're trying to do is create a baseline standard. So particularly in regards to heat island mitigation, this is something that should be done and we're recommending. Also on the commercial side, there is an option to trade off the cool roof for higher efficiency building, whether it's through heating cooling system or insulation. You can actually do a performance analysis is what they call it, and you can trade off doing the cool roof. So the current code for commercial buildings has this requirement, but then you could trade it off if you do other higher efficiency things. What we're saying from a heat island perspective, you should always do this. And so that's another amendment we're making for the commercial buildings that you can't trade it off. You have to have a cool roof. And same thing for single family as well. So that's A. B is some of our favorite topics here. One of our favorite topics is electric vehicle charging. And what we're proposing is um, to have EV capable. There are in the industry, there's three terms that are used: as EV ready, EV capable, and EV installed. EV capable means that you have the electrical capacity in your electrical service panel. And what we're proposing is to have that reserve space in the electrical panel identified. So there's a label there that says future EV charging. The homeowner would always know that they have that capacity because it's labeled in the electrical panel with a reserve space to install it. AV ready is actually putting in the breaker and running the electrical line to the garage to an outlet box. We started off proposing that, but we did hear from the Home Builders Association. We heard some potential issues of not knowing what size breaker you would need, depending on what size card you get in terms of electric vehicle, whether it's the electric trucks, Silverado, or whatever it may require higher amperage. So we're looking at the baseline requirement, which would be EV capable, having the electrical capacity and a reserve breaker space that's labeled. For multifamily and hotels, we're looking at 20% capable. Not installed, but capable, once again, having the electrical capacity and the electrical service panel but in this case, running conduit to the parking area and capping it off. So having a raceway, so in the future, it's easy to pull the wire and put in a charging device in the parking lot. But then 4% will be installed. We searched around the country and looked at model standards for this, and also we looked at what's being proposed for the 2024 energy code in regards to EV charging. And so we feel that this is a fairly conservative number. We're seeing higher numbers in other jurisdictions and the proposed national standard. So we feel our numbers are very conservative in this regard. So that's the EV charging. And then on to C, which is additional efficiency power package options. This is brand new in the residential code. And the only thing we're adding is 6, have an option for solar. So this is not requiring solar installation, it's only putting in the option. Because the energy code, in addition to your regular baseline requirements, has a new section that says, in addition to what you're doing in the base requirements, you also have to pick one of these items. And the unamended code is 5 items. We're adding a 6th one, the solar option. So it's offering more flexibility option to the builder, designer, homeowner to choose from one of these 6 items. And then finally, I just want to mention on the energy code, there is an appendix chapter for solar ready zones. And this is something we already adopted with the 2015 code. We adopted the 2015 codes back in 2016. It became effective January 2017. So since 2017, every new house built in Scottsdale has a solar ready zone. And it makes it easier for homeowners in the future to put in an efficient solar system, because there needs to be a free, clear, and unobstructed area on the roof. That's what this is requiring. For single family, a minimum 10%, but not less than 300 square feet. We added the 10%. This is an amendment this year, and the reason we're doing 10% because we have large houses in Scottsdale, 300 square feet. It's just not going to do it for a 5,000 square foot home. So it should be proportional, and so that's why we added the 10%, but not less than 300 square feet. What's new, totally new in this code, is for commercial. Previously, we only did the solar ready zone for residential. Now it's going to be for multifamily and commercial, and it's a minimum 40%. And that's because the energy loads are much higher in commercial and multifamily buildings, and usually they're multi-story too. So it's a greater demand of energy, and that's why it's a greater percentage. So now I'm going to move on to the Green Construction Code. But I do want to say that just before I leave the Energy Code, we do have a more detailed analysis that goes into more of the provisions and proposed amendments in the Energy Code. And I did make copies. It's a 6-page document of our assessment and some of the benefits we see and expected outcomes of the other changes, including what we talked about. So if you're interested in that, I have a stack of the analysis reports up here. Okay, so the Green Construction Code. The Green Construction Code only applies to multifamily greater than 3 stories and commercial. It doesn't apply to single-family homes. And the intent is different. It's not just health, safety, and public welfare. It's also, in the terms of public welfare, is the extended public welfare, reducing emissions from buildings that can contribute to climate change, enhancing building occupant health, conserve water, promote sustainable regenerative materials, and enhance resilience to natural and human-caused hazards. This is the purpose of this code. And it was designed initially to, well, not initially, it's designed to be a mandatory code to work in conjunction with the other codes. Because this is, once again, a model code, and it's an overlay code. So it makes references to the plumbing code, the building code, the fire code, well, maybe not the fire code, but the other codes it makes references to. 26 adoptions around the country of the Green Construction Code. 8 adoptions are mandatory. And in fact, here in Scottsdale, we adopted this early on. The 2012 was the first one we adopted, but it was voluntary. And then later it became tied into zoning. So currently, even today, we require this as a trade-off for zoning, for higher density and for zoning bonuses and density increases, you have to follow the Green Construction Code. And we've been doing this for at least 6, 7, 8 years, and we have over 30 projects following this. But if you look around the country, there's variations of this. We're the only ones in Scottsdale that one bold line, one adoption as mandatory for zoning and planning bonuses. That's Scottsdale. There was about 2 years ago, there was a national survey and they put this together. It's not 100% accurate because it's based upon a year and a half, 2-year data ago. So these are, as I mentioned, over 30 projects in Scottsdale. Most of these were done as a result of zoning bonuses. And so they have to require, they have to comply with the IGCC. And I can mention some are under construction right now, such as the Maya Hotel. There's also some apartment buildings also at Fashion Square. There's the Caesar Republic Hotel. That's also under the IGCC. They're all doing solar. And I'll just get it. So these are the major areas of the Green Construction Code: site, water, energy, indoor environmental quality, and material resources. And the first three, we had to do a lot of cross-referencing because we're already doing a lot of the site stuff already. We have an environmentally sensitive lands ordinance. We have a native plant ordinance. We have a water conservation ordinance. Uh, we have a natural area open space. We have a lot of requirements for the protection of our native plants. And so we're doing that. And so we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're proposing as a part of the amendments to reference what we're already doing. Same for water with the water conservation ordinance. And with the energy, we're proposing to just comply with our adopted energy code. But we were just talking about a little while ago, that's what we would follow. We wouldn't create other guidelines for energy efficiency. We already have that as a part of the Energy Conservation Code. Indoor environmental quality, there is some crossover to the mechanical code and to the building code. And other than that, the other remaining items are the new stuff that would become mandatory. That's on the 7 boards that we have in the back. So I'm going to reference some of those numbers of those new requirements. So let's start out with A, which is hardscape. So the IGCC requires 50% of the hardscape, and primarily what we're talking about is asphalt, because concrete is a lighter color. And it uses a index called the solar reflectance index. And so there's a number that's used there that materials have to comply with. So it's either shading 50% of that hardscape that's dark, which is usually asphalt, shaded, or have a light colored surface material like concrete. It's trying to reduce the absorption of heat in the ground. So this goes hand in hand with our heat island mitigation plan. Next, number 2 is EV capable for commercial buildings. We were talking about single family and multifamily and hotels previously. This is for commercial buildings, and the percentage is 10% EV capable and 4% installed. So this applies to a variation of different commercial uses. Then number 3 is water use efficiency. We already addressed water efficiency indoors with the plumbing fixtures. This is for outdoors, it's for the landscape, and we've communicated with our Scottsdale Water Resources Department, and they're pushing to have greater efficiency with landscape irrigation. And so these provisions are already a part of the Green Construction Code. Our Water Resources Department suggested a few amendments, so we modified it some, but essentially it's still the same outcome: efficient irrigation system and smart irrigation controllers, which happens to be WaterSense labeled. Then number 4 is photovoltaics. Under the Green Construction Code, it requires that the PV solar systems are installed. And so there are two options. One is not less, a system that could generate not less than 3% of the estimated annual energy used, or one that produces not less than 2 watts per square foot of gross roof area. So we've looked at some current buildings like the Maya Hotel. They're currently required to have solar. And using the 2 watts per square foot, I just calculated what size system they would need: a 26.4 kW system, which would cover about 30%, 13% of the roof. The My Hotel has amenities on the roof deck. It's occupied, it has swimming pools, it has a bar, has a lounge area. Um, With this rough calculation, only 13% of the roof would need to have solar. And on this diagram, you can see there's some solar panels up there on the roof on that one end. Um, so we also did this on a number of other projects to see how it would impact the roof. And it seems that this is a very conservative number, the 2 watts per square foot. But we also have the other option, or 3% of the total annual projected energy load offset. So there are some options we're offering, and it seems to be fairly conservative in terms of the amount of energy. The average size solar system being installed in Scottsdale is about 10 to 12 kW. This 7-story building only has a 26.4 kW. I mean, it's not that much larger than what's on the residential. And then number 5 is indoor environmental quality. This is off-gassing. It's trying to lower the amount of volatile organic compounds, VOCs. And the reason is only it's 85%, and we amended this because actually in the 2021 Energy Code, it states 100%. But currently, under the current edition of the Green Construction Code we're using, is 85%. So we want to be conservative as a mandatory code to only do 85%. All the major paint manufacturers have transitioned to this already. Even if you go to your home improvement center, majority of everything is going to be low VOC. They even have it on the can. So it's not really an impact. It's one of those low-hanging fruit items again. And then number 6 is construction waste management, diverting not less than 50% of the construction waste from landfill. Once again, that's something we're doing now with our green construction code projects, and we're proposing to continue this with 50%. And then finally, number 7 is reduce impact materials. And this gives you an option: choose any 2 of these 4 items. Recycled content, and these percentages are very low. We think it's very conservative. Only 10% of building materials need to have recycled content. And what that means is like your metal, all steel has recycled content. There's other materials that has recycled content. Regional materials are your local materials within 500 miles of the site. Concrete is a local material. Masonry is a local material. Any bricks that are made is a local material. And then there are a couple of other options: bio-based and wood, meaning that the wood and lumber would need to come from a sustainably managed forest. And so there are programs and certification labeling programs for that. And then there is environmental product declarations. They're like nutrition labels, just tells you what the composition is of a product. Doesn't require you to do anything except make the product, the ingredients of any product transparent. It just promotes transparency, particularly related to environmental impacts. and to health impacts. Finally, I want to say a lot of this stuff is low-hanging fruit. These are strategies in the IGCC that most have become mandatory or in transition of becoming mandatory because they're so easy to meet in terms of costs. They're cost neutral and they're beneficial for the buildings. So that's my overview, and I'm going to open it up for questions now.
Just a few more things you're going to hear from me before we get started on the Q&A. I did the same thing, shoot, and I don't want to hold that the whole time, so there. I wanted to let you all know that this session is recorded. So those of you that are taking copious notes, you can go back to our website and you'll be able to access the recording in the next few days so that you can kind of refresh yourself if you have something you weren't, you missed or you were thinking about, you wanted to revisit. The other thing is these proposed updates have definitely generated much interest and a lot of energy. The very fact that we have this many people packed in this room to talk about these amendments shows that there's passion and that there's a lot of thoughts and ideas behind all of these things. So before we launch into Q&A and before we go into our breakout work tables, I just wanted to urge you to listen to other people's questions, listen respectfully, be accountable for your own actions and the things that you say. And, civil dialogue sets a real stage for rigorous and dynamic conversation. It allows us to think differently and outside of the box. And we urge you to just be respectful of all that and see this as an opportunity to get better and be stronger. The Q&A session also is a time for clarifying questions only. So we're only going to take questions when you want to log your comments or you have something that you want to share. We're going to ask you to save that for the second part of our meeting. And if we start to stray, it's my job to bring us back to the Q&A. So if you feel like I'm being abrupt, I may have to be. The next thing too is those of you that are attending virtually, be sure that you're using the chat section in features so that you can ask your questions. And again, we'll be bopping back and forth. I'll check in with Lisa. She's tracking the chat and the questions. And so with that, we'll go ahead and get started. We have Cindy who has a microphone. So when I call on somebody, wait till Cindy gets to you because that way we can all hear your question. And I'm going to try to bounce around the room and then bounce virtually. So we want to give everybody a chance. So if you have more than one question, I'm going to ask you to hold off until everyone's had their chance. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started. All right, I see Tony right up front here. Oh, I'm sorry, Cindy's right there. We'll get you next, Tony. Nick has a question.
I'm Nick Brown from the Roosevelt Miller neighborhood in South Scottsdale. Congratulations, you've done a great job so far. I think it's a really nice structure for us to work with.
Nice, okay, great.
By the nature of codes, almost everything is a carrot, or a stick rather. There are no carrots. And I'm wondering, in light of our water situation now, if there's an intention that we would pair any of the requirements with disincentives to overuse, for example, lawns. We've heard a little bit about already. And I'm just sort of wondering if there's any way that we can pair those to make the disincentives or the constraints more effective.
Thanks, Nick.
Well, yeah, that'll be difficult for me to answer. I know our Scottsdale Water is working on a number of things. And I have not been a part of that conversation. I've been primarily related or focused on the building and indoor water use and outdoor water use in terms of landscaping at this point. I don't know if any other staff here would like to address that.
I think,
I'm just going to answer that really quick. The city council, hi. The city council just approved an ordinance change that prohibits an HOA from requiring its residents to convert to winter lawn. So we are, to answer, we are doing a number of things, and that's just one that happened last week.
All right, Tony, I promised you were next.
Thank you. Well, I have another question, but this was one of my questions too. So since you are adopting the water efficiency indoor, and then you're also adopting the exterior for landscape, what provisions are either going to be or could be in the program to incentivize, instead of punishing, incentivizing builders to go with a WaterSense program or NGBS's WRI through some form of permit expediting or actual incentives?
Let me see if I can answer this. Actual incentives. Well, let me clarify. This code is for new construction. The incentive programs work better for existing. And our water conservation department has a number of incentive programs, rebate programs to convert your landscape from turf to drought tolerant landscape. Also, they have incentives for indoor water use fixtures. So it's the whole host of incentives that they have for existing buildings. So are you talking about existing buildings or new buildings?
No.
Or all of the above?
I'm talking about, so I'm a home builder. We've certified everything through NGBS for, well, at least currently with NGBS for over 10 years, and we've been certifying all of our homes through one form or another for 18 years. So I'm not here to argue against it because every code change that's happened in Oregon and Washington, we've been doing it 4 to 5 years prior. I'm just looking at, from a certification standpoint, certification kind of brings it all together. And so, we're actually now doing all of our homes through the DOE Zero Energy program. And so we're doing Indoor Air Plus, and we're doing WaterSense and we're doing a multitude of different things, but having them certified checks all the boxes, everything's together. So I was curious is there a certification? WaterSense obviously has its own program and how they want all this to tie together instead of just a point system. Because what I've seen through the jurisdictions that I've been building in, where I get frustrated with it, it's a point-based instead of a performance-based.
I see.
And when it's a performance-based, I think you encourage more innovation and you encourage more. We all have different paths to get to the same result, but when we're just checking boxes, we're literally just checking boxes. And using solar as another example, Oregon's getting mocked right now among a million things, but one of the things, they require solar on all their homes or all their buildings, especially their government buildings. So one of the pictures that gets passed around is a guy installing solar panels, but all of the panels behind him are shaded by trees. So it's just an optic of we're requiring panels, but they're completely ineffective. So that's why if it was done through a certification program, they would have been told it's an ineffective structure to have solar. But they're required to. So I'm hoping there's some balance. And I'm glad you mentioned that there's some incentives in place for existing stock, because we're running out of runway right now on what more we can actually do to our homes. And the weight is all on the home builder and the builder to improve the structure. But you've got this massive stock of existing homes and buildings that are the true consumption hogs of all the energy and water and those types of things.
Yeah, just quickly on a couple of your points. This is not a certification program, it's minimum baseline requirements. And then certification programs are above, like the LEED rating system, it's an aspirational program. Usually it's trying to push the market and
Sure.
A leading edge type program.
Sure.
We're not proposing a leading edge program. This is the minimum baseline requirements. That's what codes are, the minimum baseline. So that's the approach that we're taking.
So Tony, what I would suggest is that when we break out to our workstations, that you make comments on the sheets, even if it's not under the amendments that we have listed, flip it over, head it what you want and write those things down, because it doesn't mean that we will get it to the right department, number one. And number two, those things might be in consideration down the road. So they're good thoughts and ideas, and we appreciate that. And if you'll save that for when you break out to the tables, that would be awesome. And with that, I think Cindy's going to take the microphone from you, but we do have a virtual question and Lisa is going to share that.
Yeah, so this is from Michael Ruiz, and it's a similar question, but it's talking about how will there be regulation of the mandatory solar for buildings? So if the solar systems go down, is there any incentive or way to track for them to fix it?
No, typically with building codes, after the CFO is issued, we're not monitoring the performance of the building. So it's out of scope of the building codes. But we are requiring verification. And that's back to your point, Tony, just to mention that all of this will need to be verified through inspections. And in some cases, third-party verification. And we're doing some of that with single-family homes now for energy compliance. There's third-party energy raters that are out there on the residential. And that's also available in the commercial buildings. It's called commissioning. And we're doing that now with our current IGCC code. And so that there's a third party that's going in and testing and verifying. And it happens with solar and with energy systems. So all of that is verified that it's operating correctly before the issue of the CFO and before people occupy the building.
Lisa, before we move forward, can I ask you how many questions you have logged in the chat so far? Just a
I
estimate.
just have one more at this
Oh,
point.
okay, good. I'm just trying to gauge our time and what we can do in this next few minutes. So go ahead, you're next to Sonny. I can't see your name tag, so yeah, go
Sure.
ahead. Yeah.
I'm Jan Green. I'm a residential realtor here in Scottsdale, specializing in sustainability. My question is pretty simple. On the multifamily side for EV charging, whether it's capable or ready, does that include visitor parking as well? That same percentage?
Right now, yes, the total parking. But then there's an exception for parking spaces that's for how is it worded? For like delivery trucks, temporary parking spaces that are not passenger vehicles, yeah, that's the term. If it's not passenger, then it's not included in the count.
Right. Is that Dan?
Yes.
All right,
Dan
fire
has it.
away.
I understand this is for new construction. Is there a threshold at which a renovation project would become subject to any of the new requirements? And if not, has any thought been given to creating that threshold?
Yeah, that's a good question. When you're talking about a renovation project, the building codes do not require buildings to be brought up to today's code if they were built and approved under a previous code. However, there is an exception where we get into the existing building code that we talked about, that talks about levels 1, 2, and 3 types of alterations. Also, basically, there's a certain premise that if you touch something, you have to bring that particular item up to code that you've touched. In other words, if we were to create a corridor in here, then it's not necessary to bring the whole building up to code, but that corridor we create has to meet today's standards. And so it's going to be on a case-by-case basis, and we have to review it in the context of what the project is going to be.
Great, we have a question in the back.
Hi. You said about high efficiency plumbing. It included urinals. Will that be waterless urinals only in commercial buildings, or are they still allowing water urinals to go forward?
Yeah, high efficiency is 0.5 gallons per flush versus 1 gallon per flush. Waterless urinals is permitted under the plumbing code, but you have to have a water supply stub out. So if you want to convert in the future, you can. So it is allowed, but we're not requiring waterless urinals. We're allowing them as long as you have a supply pipe nearby.
Lisa, you want to give us a virtual question?
Yeah, so we have one more. Someone's curious about the concept of community solar, the idea that multiple residences could share a solar array. Is that mentioned in either the energy or the green code?
No, it's not. And the solar is not mandatory for single family. It's only multifamily buildings. So I think the community solar would be like a neighborhood of single family homes. So that's not really applicable. It's not, it doesn't fall under the scope of the IGCC.
Thank you. Ali, I just have a quick question going back to where does this get to be implemented? But just to clarify, this is still a voluntary code. It only apply for rezoning in Old Town, correct? Or are we going to be taking it to be applied for all new construction?
All new construction.
So, and this is go back, especially, for item that contradict with our DSPM right now, right? There is a lot of stuff that in the green code that as in the DSPM we cannot implement. So is this going, both of them will go along together to be revised, or is it just now? Like, for example, a green roof. I mean, this is, like when it comes to stormwater runoff management and whatnot, I mean, this is not something is allowed in the DSPM right now. So I'm not sure if this revision will have to happen as well.
Yeah. The DSPM is the Design Standard Policy Manual. Thank you. I always get those acronyms mixed up, so please forgive me for that. But it is a set of regulations, and it's a policy manual. And so it gives you certain thresholds or standards to which things need to be built. It's and we try not to have uh, any of the building codes or of our codes in the DSMPM to avoid any conflicts. And so I wasn't aware of that, Ali. That's something that we're going to have to look at to make sure we don't have a conflict there.
Sure.
If it's in one of our codes, I would say right now that the code would prevail over the DSMPM because that's talking about life safety, and we would have to take a look at that specific area to see if there are any further conflicts.
Okay, fair enough. And I will go back to just, I mean, this is awesome that we're implementing this. The same, going back to incentive, um, as Anthony mentioned, this is a base, but you can take it to completely different level, right? So I don't know if there is a program incentive for new development that maybe they get some, I mean, we've seen some municipality do some expedited review. We've seen some other aspect that could take place along with this code, but I would strongly recommend something to consider. I don't know how, but just to take it up from the base line of the code, with like gray water treatment, stormwater reuse, a lot of items that could be added value to what we're trying to do here, that maybe could be implemented as an incentive.
And I understand where you're coming from. I just want to remind everybody that the incentives fall a little bit outside of the scope of what we're trying to do. We're just trying to get the codes adopted, and those codes represent the minimum standards that you have to achieve in order to become code compliant. And I need to put this in because I've heard expedited reviews mentioned several times. I want everybody to keep in mind that our goal is to review plans for permitting within 21 calendar days. And we meet that about 98% of the time right now. And so it's difficult, given the staffing that we have and the number of plans that we have, to expedite that. But just because we say 21 days doesn't mean we wait for 21 days to finish the review. If at all possible, we do it a lot quicker. But any incentives or anything like that, that's something that we'd have to look at in the future. I don't want to close it out totally, but I think it's something we would have to take a look at very judiciously.
Yes,
Barney.
my name is Barney Gonzalez. One of the things I had a question about is you're referring to these incentives. The incentives, how are you gonna do this by code management? Or are you gonna do this by some other means? Because one of the things that we're trying to do as far as planning and zoning is to eliminate bonuses, as in heights, color, size, you know, and different things like that. When you start trying to do incentivizing things, then sometimes you start doing this bonus incentives that basically some of us have been trying to eliminate because in practice, it's not as good as the intention. The intention is always a positive thing, but the practice doesn't always relate to a benefit to the public.
And again, I just want to stress, we're not looking at providing incentives with the adoption of these codes. If these codes are adopted and if they are mandatory, these are the minimum requirements that you have to meet in order to get a permit and ultimately a certificate of occupancy.
We want to make sure we get other people. If we have time, we'll get back to you. And just remember, we're here asking clarifying questions related to the proposed amendments that are here this evening. So with that, Marnie.
Thanks, Christy. To clarify something I believe was said with residential EV capable, it was to require a dedicated space in the circuit breaker box, not a conduit. That would not be required. And has there been a cost assessment in terms of what it costs a homeowner to bring in EV?
Okay. Yeah, I need to clarify that for single-family homes. If the electrical service is not mounted to the exterior of the garage wall, in other words, if it's remotely located from the garage, then a conduit would have to be installed. Without the wires, just a conduit that runs to the garage and terminates in a junction box or outlet box. In terms of costs, it's estimated that it costs 2 to 3 times more if you retrofit later and don't do it up front. At the time of the construction, it's cheaper, at least expensive, because everything's opened up and you can run your conduit at that time. If you have to do a retrofit, then it's going to cost more. The estimate we see is 2 to 3 times more to do it then. And then obviously it depends on the size of the house. It depends on where the electrical service is located and where the garage is and what that distance is.
Thank you.
We have time for 2 or 3 more questions. So if there's somebody that hasn't asked a question, we'd like to go to them first. Anybody out there? And with that, then, okay, great. We should have time for you, Tony, and you as well in the back, sir.
Hi, I'm Helene. I'm a Scottsdale resident. The construction waste management minimum, 50 to 50% diversion rate, how is that going to be, how is that going to be analyzed, whether that's met or not?
Yeah, we're doing it right now with the construction waste diversion reports that are generated monthly, usually by the waste management companies. The general contractor contracts with a waste management company. There's Republic Services, there's Waste Management, there's other companies that are out there. And from our experience so far with the Green Construction Code, we've been getting those monthly reports. But that 50% is an average over the course of the project. So depending on how long it may take, it could be a year, it's the average over the year. So they could be doing really poorly at the beginning, but as long as they know they have to get to 30% over time, then we can monitor to see if they're headed in the right direction and warn them and remind them that they need to pick up their recyclables to get the needed percentage.
Right, we have time for, I think, Tony up here.
I also have one more online, just to get in the
Okay.
queue.
All right, we'll do Tony because I keep saying I'm going to do Tony and then we'll go to the virtual and then in the back.
Okay.
All right.
Anthony, question for you. I believe you had been on the NGBS Advisory Committee 2008, 2012. And it was brought to my attention that the IGCC amendment limits NGBS multifamily to less than 4 stories, even though NGBS and mixed use, or NGBS multifamily and mixed use does not have a height limitation. Do you know why that was limited?
For everyone else, NGBS, this National Green Building Standard that was developed by the Home Builders Association. And yeah, I was involved in that committee early on. It's because the distinction is actually in the building code. It makes a distinction that buildings over 3 stories fall under the commercial code. If they're 3 or less, then it falls under the residential code. So that's why we're using that split, because that's in the building code.
Okay. Because the 2021, or excuse me, the 2022 NGBS is actually going to expand into that and will provide options for larger
Yeah.
story hotel and other buildings like that
Yeah.
that want to adopt the program.
If you can submit a comment on that.
Okay.
One thing I didn't mention is that there's alternative paths for compliance to the Green Construction Code. And one of them is LEED, Green Globes, and I have to double check. I thought we had the National Green Building Standard in there. But there's alternative paths. There are third-party certification programs for green building, and we want to recognize them because they're aspirational programs that go beyond what we're requiring. And so if you're part of that program, if a building gets certified under that program, then they're deemed to be in compliance with the Green Construction Code. That's the intent.
Lisa.
So Suzanne Brown online had asked relative to the EV charging capable requirements for commercial, is the 4% installed included in or in addition to the 20% EV capable spaces?
It's in addition to
Okay.
the 20%.
Wait. They can't hear you online.
Oh, so, okay, thank you. Just last 2 questions I have, and going back, Anthony, to the water conservation part. Is there a way we can add to the code something related to construction, water use? You know, there is a lot of discussion now about how you reduce water during construction and means of dust control or whatnot. Can this be part of the water efficiency as well or not?
It has not been considered, but that's something that you can make a comment on.
Okay. And then the last question I have, will this be implemented for city project as well? So all of the new city project from public work, capital, I mean, we've seen these projects come in. Are these code will be implemented on city projects?
That's not the intent at this point. All of our city facilities need to meet the legal level of certification. That's been in place since 2005. We have over 15 LEED certified projects, and LEED Gold is a much higher level than the Green Construction Code.
Yeah, man, I'm talking about general public work project, even, you know, under capital improvement, stuff related, you know, like the
It
sidewalk
only relates to
improvement.
buildings.
Huh?
Are you talking about just buildings or?
Yeah, even sidewalk improvement that we see or bike lane.
No, it doesn't apply to infrastructure, sidewalks.
Okay.
Yeah, it's only buildings.
Is there an opportunity to do so on these update or not?
You can submit a comment, but I'm not aware of those green infrastructure standards.
Thank you.
All right, so I think last call on questions. I think we're ready to move into, okay, we do have one. Yes, sir.
Can't hear you.
Will Holloman, I'm a resident of Scottsdale. I'm just curious if there's a minimum amp or voltage requirement for the EV charging. In other words, would a 110 volt outlet be compliant on a parking space or in a garage and residential?
Yeah, I didn't mention that detail, but it's 240 volts. Yeah, that way you can get to level 2 charging versus
Okay,
level
so
1.
level 2 is the minimum for
Yeah,
compliance.
Level 2. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. So before we transition into the workstations, we're going to take just like a 2-minute break. I did want to mention that the recording of this meeting ends now as we break out into the workstations. And if you don't have any comments or you've already written them or you're going to do it online, you do not have to stay for the second half. You're more than welcome to head on home and get your dinner since we only fed you snacks. And what was the last thing? Oh, what's going to happen next? I think Michael alluded to it earlier. There'll be a board meeting and a commission meeting for Baba and Seek, right? And those dates are, I think Michael gave them and they're online. And then those meetings and the feedback from this meeting and all the comments that are coming in online will be compiled and shared with council. And that'll be a third opportunity for public comment if you want to attend that as well. Is there anything I'm missing? That's good. So with that, we'll see you in the back and we're going to start pulling some tables around, chairs out so you have a little bit more room to move around.